debate. Today the motion is this House believes that people who maintain an unhealthy lifestyle should pay more for the medical assistance in public hospitals. And I now ask you to present yourselves so that I can write down your names. So for the government.
I'm the first speaker of the proposition team. My name is Sara Maria Caviglia.
I'm the second speaker and I'm Cristiana Sidodi.
I'm the third, I'm Emanuele Artoni.
And for the reply?
I will do the reply.
Okay, thank you. Now for the opposition?
Yes, I'm the first speaker, Domenica Pastore.
Thank you.
I'm the second, Simona Nero. And I'm the third, Maria Paola Stilana.
And the reply? Okay, so if you're ready, I'm gonna keep the timer on so you can hear the sound. You can keep your own timer, obviously. When you stand up, you can take off your mask so we can hear you properly. And also when you are asking for a POI, you can stand up and take off your mask while you're talking, so you don't have to repeat.
So, may I stand here in the center, or would you like to
You
refer
can
here?
stand there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. To make a mistake is human, but to persevere is monstrous, said Cicero. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this debate. I'm Sara and I'm the first speaker of the proposition team. Firstly, as my role requires, I will of course define the terms of our motion. And secondly, I will state our line of conduct, and at last, I will also present our first argumentation. Firstly, our motion states that this House believes that people who maintain an unhealthy lifestyle should pay more for the medical assistance in public hospitals. Firstly, what do people who maintain an unhealthy lifestyle mean? We define an unhealthy lifestyle, or rather people who maintain this kind of lifestyle, as people who make the conscious decision, so not derived from psychological factors, to cause harm to themselves over time. Secondly, what does pay more mean? Pay more, in our opinion, means that they should not pay randomly, but they should be paying more. In my first argumentation, I will develop what does pay more exactly mean for the proposition team, because we do not believe that we should just make people pay more in a random way. We think that we should make them pay more in a specific way, which I will develop further later. What is our line of conduct and what do we believe in? As the proposition team, we believe that we shouldn't subsidize and encourage bad choices. In fact, those people who make the decision of continuing to cause harm to themselves are making the conscious decision to both cause harm not only to themselves but also to our community. I, as the first speaker, will talk about specifically what causing harm to themselves mean, and secondly, our second speaker, Cristiana, will talk about how this harm does not only affect, of course, themselves, those people, those individuals, but also our community as well. So the first thing that I want to say, that I want to state, is that those people don't care about themselves, but we should care about them. In fact, with making those conscious decisions, they cause harm to themselves, but we think that we should care more about them than they do to themselves. But in the way that we are doing it now, in our opinion, so continuing to give them access with no problems, with no limitations to our public health system, in our opinion, is wrong. In fact, we believe that by continuing to give them this kind of access, we are sort of encouraging that type of behavior. Because of course, they don't have to pay a certain price, they don't have to continue to spend money over time to, of course, continue their behaviors, continue pursuing those behaviors. But what if we made them pay more for their behaviors? What if we made them, of course, pay a higher price for what they're doing? This, of course, would encourage people to stop. In our opinion, in fact, people who do this kind of behavior would be stopped if there were an economical obstacle between that behavior, that bad choice, and them. Therefore, we say that these kind of behaviors, these kind of actions would be discouraged if we reached this kind of solution which is proposed in our motion. Therefore, we think that by doing this, by choosing to make them pay more, we would actually discourage them from doing those behaviors. Naturally, we recognize that people with addictions can't stop and wouldn't stop even if they were paid, even if they were made to pay more. But naturally, we don't consider that because, as we know, addictions are caused by psychological factors. Therefore, that definition, of course, cannot be applied here because their decision is not a conscious one. What we would propose is that before this kind of price, before the application of this kind of cost, we would do a psychological. Yes.
Can you clearly state what you define unhealthy and a conscious choice to maintain an unhealthy lifestyle?
Thank you for your question. We define being unhealthy as a behavior that continues over time, which causes harm, physical harm to the people involved. So the individuals, but there are also many examples, as Cristiana will tackle on later, that do not only involve those individuals specifically, but also the community as well. I'm going to introduce it. Of course, I will let her talk about this specific matter further in her speech. But for example, what happened during our pandemic, the pandemic of COVID-19, is quite interesting. It's quite yes, it is quite interesting, and it is very fit for this conversation, for this debate, because those people who actually weren't vaccinating themselves not only caused harm to themselves by not vaccinating, by not getting the vaccine, but they of course cause harm to the community, to the entirety of the community. Therefore, we state that as the proposition team, that we should care more about those people, but also about the other people involved, which, as we know, is the entire community, is us. Thank you for your time, and for listening to me. Opposition team, the floor is yours.
When you're ready, you can go in Monica.
Speaking in 3, 2, 1, go. Leave no one behind. Agenda 2030. Good morning, everybody. I'm Domenica, and I'm the first speaker of Team Opposition. Today, we're here to debate against the motion of the House. That is, this House believes that people who maintain an unhealthy lifestyle should pay more for their medical assistance in public hospitals. We think that this is actually not right under so many points of view, and we are going to show that through our argumentation. Now I'm going to move on to the team outline to show you precisely what we're going to deal with. First, as the first speaker, I'm going to talk about the ethical issue related to the division that you made into into making people pay more based on their health condition previously to their access to hospitals. Secondly, my colleague, the second speaker, Simona, is going to talk about the socio-economical issue that will develop if we actually make people pay more because they are unhealthy before accessing public hospitals. And thirdly, last but not least, the third speaker, Maria Paola, is going to recap all our points of strength and finally convince you that we should never pay more for public health care. Before going on with my argumentation, I'd like to refute some of the arguments that you brought up before in the discourse. Firstly, you talked about unhealthy being a conscious decision to cause harm to people and to an individual conscious decision to make harm to himself or herself and to people in general in the community. But unhealthy as a term is not that specific. We could consider unhealthy drug addiction, we could consider unhealthy diabetes, obesity, and what are we to decide what's unhealthy and what is not? Moreover, you say to make people pay more, not at random, which is, I agree with that because that would be insane, but up to a certain extent, because I don't think that actually making people pay more for their health care will encourage them to be better people, to care better for their health, because people are not that strong-willed. Will and what is right, even if we put an economic limit to it, the cost, are two different things. People can see what is right for them, but they might not have the right will or the right heart to pursue that, and we should acknowledge that. Moreover, going further to that point, I think that there are also economic losses when people pursue an unhealthy lifestyle, because if they go buying alcohol, if they go buying drugs, or even, I don't know, if they spend too much money on food, they have economic losses. Moreover, you talked about the no-vax people. Well, we see that with Green Pass, that didn't do anything to them. There were people that were actually going into hospitals and making themselves not vaccinated and signing themselves as vaccine. And we know that this is a criminal behavior that was enhanced by the Green Pass itself. And also, people, they did indeed make harm, but they did not care that they might have lost their job. There are many teachers who are now not teaching because they do not believe in that, or people who lost their career to that. So I don't think that putting an economical limit, a cost to healthcare will actually make them cure themselves better and live a better life. Now I'd like to go with the ethical issues. Do we really have the power to judge who will live and who will die? I don't think so. This is not possible. As the Agenda 2030 that I mentioned before, we must leave no one behind, because we are the same, we are people, and we are not superior to one another. We can never think that making people pay more will make them care better for themselves. That will actually put them aside. We will actually leave them behind, and we cannot permit that. We cannot afford that. We should all be together as a community in a period that is so hard to deal with the crisis, the economic crisis, the COVID pandemic, and everything that goes on in our lives. We cannot permit our prejudice to make people suffer even more, because we think that if people conduct an healthy lifestyle, it might be a choice at first, but then maintaining it means that there is a problem indeed, and we should keep on solving that problem, not going against that, because that is what paying more for public hospitals care would make. That will result in that. It will result in people in a more large and wide gap through the poor masses that will be unhealthy, and a little elite that will be healthy because they can afford that. Because even if there will be even more discrimination to that, and we can actually generate and create a fourth world. We already know that there are people that cannot access public health, and if we put public health to them, and then after some years, because they reached a good economic state, we put another limit to that, it will actually be a drawback to that. We will actually make so many years, so many steps behind what we reached before. I think that this is not a progress. That paying more for healthcare is not a progress at all. It's actually a limit that we put to people. When we have to care for them, we have to help them, of course. And what if it was us that for certain reason had an unhealthy lifestyle? We will not be, we wouldn't want to have the door of the hospital closed, or even if we were to be safe and then we were to pay more for our life being sad, our life will actually become even worse after we would have been saved. So I don't think that the proposition house motion is valid under an ethical point of view, because it would put limits and it would differentiate people even more, and also after an economic point of view, because people will actually have more economic losses than gains, as the second speaker would say soon. So we should never make people pay more for their health because they want to become healthier, they want to start a better life, because that is a limit and not progress. Thank you.
So if you're ready, Cristiana, you can go.
Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Good morning to everyone, to the judges and to our worthy opponent. Thanks, Domenica, for your contribution to this debate. There are some points that I would like to discuss, because we have found some points that we don't agree with. One of the major point is that you said that if we would make them pay, if we would make all the patients to pay for health, we would create a sort of egalitarian society where only a part of population could have access to health. But our first speaker, Sarah, talked about a certain system of paying, and what we were thinking about was a proportional system. So we would create a payment that would not be the same for everyone. It will be based or income or everyone's income. So who's richer will pay more, and who's poorer will pay less. So this was our idea of creating a proportional system. And also at a certain point you talked about unhealthy lifestyles such as drugs addiction, diabetes, I think you mentioned. But in the beginning we have specified the fact that we are not going to talk about drug addiction, also because at a certain point drug addiction becomes more a sort of psychological problem. So as an addiction, it's the body who requires it, and it's not more a conscious choice. So these were two of the major points I wanted to clarify. What I'm going to talk, as Sarah has anticipated, is the impact on community and in general on society. And so we believe that that some people could
Can you make an example of an unhealthy thing?
Sorry?
Can you make an example of what unhealthy is for you?
As I was going to talk, thanks for your POI. As I was going to talk, we are presenting an example that is the case of Novax and general of COVID situation. Also because we have seen the case of Novax decision and COVID party. And in particular, what we believe is that some people at a certain point, knowing that there is public health, and so the state is going to pay for then also health treatment, may take advantage of that. And so we were presenting the case of COVID party because we have seen in these months that many people decided to have a party or to go to parties, feasts, so to have fun. With the idea that even if they might be infected with COVID, they wouldn't be a great deal. So that was the point. And also Novax as a decision, a conscious decision, because they chose and in a total autonomy, they have chosen to not get vaccinated. But this has brought lots of problems, such as the hospitals and places in hospitals. So when Sarah talked about the fact that this decision could hurt the community, could cause harm to the community, we were thinking about the fact that these people were decided not to get vaccinated. They were infected with COVID, and they had serious damages to health, and they needed to be brought in hospital and to get treated. And so this has taken away several hospital places to other diseases and other also operations that were important, and they were essential for other people that hadn't COVID. So that was one of our major points. And so we believe that if you decide that you have another point that I forgot, you mentioned about the fact that responsibility doesn't exist, right? So that is more that sometimes responsibility doesn't exist. Well, we think that if you decide about your health, in a certain way responsibility exists because you are making a conscious choice. You are deciding what to do with your own health. It isn't the state who decides for you. It's your personal choice. So to discourage this kind of behaviors, we were thinking about a proportional system, but also, as Sarah as mentioned, to certificate also the fact that this isn't a psychological problem, so it's conscious decision. We were thinking about psychological test to understand whether it is or not real situations. To sum up my points, we were thinking about, so we brought the example of COVID to show that also this decision, or also conscious decision had an impact on society. It isn't only something that affects the single person, but also all the society. And we were thinking about as a solution to not make people more in a random way, but with a thought way, as proportional system. I finished my speech. Thanks for your attention and for your POI.
So the second speaker of the opposition can start.
Starting in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, good morning everybody. I'm Simona, second speaker of the team The Flyers, that is the opposition one. And as the first speaker of my team was saying, I will talk about the socio-economical aspects. But before doing this, I just want to refute something that the previous speaker said. Previous speaker said that the payment would be based on the income. So who's rich will pay more and who's poor will pay less. But who's poor will be a tax, and the money that these people has to spend because of the payments that you say that will discourage the bad behaviors that you mentioned, at the end would just make people more poorer and poorer, and they will not arrive at the end of the month because of the money that they had to spend on their health because of the payment that you want to make. And this is unfair because a family of 4 people, how could arrive at the end of the month if most of their money was spent on health? Then I want also to say that this discouraging that you want to make is not something that can happen because there's the free will. You can make obstacles, economical obstacles, but if I want to do something, I will do that thing. As my first speaker was saying, also the green pass that was an obstacle for the Novavax people doesn't work because there are still people who are not vaccinated despite all the obstacles and of the green pass and that the state has made. So if I want, I do, no matter what the state or people as you would make or would think that would work to stop me, to stop my bad behaviors. But now, yes.
So what would you do about that?
Okay. As I was saying, bad behaviors are, everyone should be cared, despite the fact that they have bad behaviors or they are not. And so, as I was saying, we cannot impose to people to stop doing what they do. It will be just an imposition, and imposition leads to nothing. So we should just try to make people understand what is the limit of what you're doing, not imposing payments and taxes that goes nowhere and that make people poorer and poorer and poorer. But thank you for the question. But now let's move to my argumentation. I want to start by defining what is public. Public is something that involves the community, the entire community. So everyone must be treated the same way without making, differences between who can be cured and who can't be cured. And if we make these differences, we are judging in some ways someone else's life. And who are we to judge someone else's lifestyle? Are we judges? I don't think we are judges, and I don't think that we should do this. Then I would also to say that if someone can't pay for the cures, would definitely go to someone else for asking for money, and there will be incredible consequences. The criminality rates would increase. And also, people who can't go to these people to ask for money would go to doctors that are not specialized. And the damage that their body would have would be tremendous, would be enormous. And what would you do to these people? Would not cure the diseases that your system has created, because they can't go to an hospital and say, oh my God, I'm healed, but yes, I have some problems. Can you cure me? And they say, no, we can't, because you have these bad behaviors. It's not the system that we want, and it's not something that could work, because it just increases problems all along the society and about the health of the people that will be even more ill and ill and ill, and they can't go to the hospital to cure for all the problems that you would create them by applicating the system. Then I want also to mention that by increasing the taxes, also the medicine, the cost of medicine would increase. And if the medicine cost increase, how do you think these people would afford them? And don't you think that this terrible increase would cause also inflections that will lead to another terrible economic crisis as the one that we're trying to get out of? Don't you think that this problem would be so enhancing and so terrible, not just for the people, but just for the state that cannot permit to have another economical crisis as the one we're getting out of? It's just insane to think that this could work, that this is something that could make people have better behaviors. Do you have a question? No, thank you for me, no? But I want also to mention that nowadays, with the and there's no period of crisis or so terrible crisis. In the US, a family made up of 4 people has to spend over $1,000 for food, and the crisis would also go on have an impact, terrible impact on this. And I don't want to think about all the other, things that they have to buy, the bills they have to pay, and all the other things. All the prices will be doubled, will be tripled, and this is not something that common people can, afford. But just some elites could afford this. As the first speaker was quoting, there will be a gap that will be even more increased between who can permit these products. So who has the money and who has not the money. And this would also go to increase the criminality rates that I quoted before. And at the end, we will live in a society that is just based on criminality. Criminality for having money, criminality that wants more money to cure you, to cure people who can't go to the hospital, and criminality who sells you food. This is not a society, this is not the society that we want, and this is not what we want you to do to the people who have just bad behaviors, or the behaviors that you think are bad. Because we don't even understand what is unhealthy, behavior in your opinion. So at the end, I just want to say that we should not let someone to be left behind, as our first quote said, based on the second goals of Agenda 2030. Leave no one behind. If you do this, you will leave an entire population behind you. And at the end, who's gonna can permit all the cures that you say will be just a little elite that at the end will do nothing, and all the people that will be left behind will be left in a state of total poverty and in a state of unhealthy. That is not what we want, and that is not what we want you to do to the population of the entire world. This is not fair, this is not correct, and this is not the world we want to live in and we want to give to the next generation and also to ours. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for yours.
Second, please.
Okay, so the third speaker,
Move my chair.
yeah, move the chair
This is good.
for the table.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have a timer, that's fine, I think. I check the opposition.
The third speaker of the proposition team can start when he's ready.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. So, good morning to everybody. I'm the third speaker of the proposition team, so my job is to end the line of argumentation that my team has presented and respond and rebut some of, well, everything the opposition team has said. I have a lot to say actually. I'd like to start by actually refuting some of the things Simona, the second speaker, has said. I think the main mistake the opposition team makes is not acknowledging the concept of personal responsibility. Simona said, I quote, that on many things, she said that making them pay would only make them poorer, first quote. Second quote, there's personal choice, there exists a personal choice to, I'm paraphrasing, to do harm to themselves no matter what the state thinks. And then she goes on, she says it would be an imposition on the part of the government to kind of disencourage these kinds of behaviors. Now, the thing about our proposition is that it's a policy decision, so of course we impose something on the public. The thing is that we, as we've said, we care deeply about people and our citizens, fellow citizens. That is why we propose, for example, a proportional system. We're not actually proposing leaving anybody behind. We're not saying that poor and destitute people should just sell everything in order to pay for their medical bills. We do believe, though, that there's not really such thing as public money and public health. There's only taxpayers' money and taxpayers' paid healthcare. So we have the responsibility not to encourage and subsidize bad behavior. We have the responsibility to taxpayers, that is to ourselves, to make sure that people don't take advantage of the system which is in place. That's why we just think that people should pay more and do what they want, as Simona has said. We live in a free society. There's no problem there. They should also take up responsibility for their actions. So if they decide to not get vaccinated or to attend to COVID parties, which is a term that was born out of last year, I think, during the height of the pandemic, those people should be held accountable, and we shouldn't just bail them out. That's our proposal. It's a practical proposal. Another point which we should have expanded upon is that the weight of the healthcare system on our budget, and we're talking about Italy here since we are in Italy, is enormous. So we don't really think there's any much space to go after those people and make sure and just let them do whatever they want for their own sake. It would hurt us and our community. So we wouldn't really be discriminating them, as Domenica has said in her first speech. We wouldn't be judging people who conduct themselves well and just go about their life, and people who are bad because they're sick. We would just make sure that people are held accountable. That is why we don't really think that people with addictions should actually be weighed in this motion. We think that although there are, original choices which led people to get addicted or smoke, etc., there's not really any high moral ground enough to support such a motion. There are also cases, for example, another example is anorexia. We agree with diabetes. One of the first things we've said is that there's conscious decisions which people make. So we should accept that some people just take advantage of the system. I'd also like to refute some other things Simona has said about, she said that basically should we allow such a policy decision to go through and just be implemented, we'd have a resurgence of underground medical activity of some kind. So that is, she's basically saying that doctors would find it economically more advantageous for themselves to move all their operations underground in order to cure people supposedly for free, since they're too poor to, they say, allow them to be treated in actual hospitals. We don't think that's really a concern. We also think that there's such things as police in the state. Criminality, they say. Yeah.
So you talked about proportional system, but don't you think that paying less wouldn't be such a problem to people in the healthcare? I'm saying that if people have a small fee, they wouldn't be so disencouraged to pursue or to make a conscious decision into bad behaviors.
So you're saying that it wouldn't really, an economic disadvantage wouldn't be enough. We don't think so. You yourself mentioned green passes and how they don't work. I think the reason they don't work is exactly because there's no really cost, there's not any cost associated to people not respecting and following through with green passes. We do think, like what the imposition Simona talked about, associated with an economic cost, would actually work towards helping people, and so that they may live their life more healthily, as long as a conscious decision is actually there. I'd like to also make an example. We already do this. For example, if you take driving licenses, the thing with driving licenses is that anybody can get one, of course, well, almost everybody can get one. But as soon as, for example, you're found driving under specific conditions, for example, if you're drunk, that means that you're responsible for a bad conduct, and the state has the right, on the basis that the community would suffer, to respond to this. That is our line, I think. I thank everybody, and I give the floor to the opposition team.
So if you're ready, the team speaker of the opposition can start.
Just a moment, I will move my chair too. Okay, speaking in 3, 2, 1, now. Good morning, everybody. I'm Maria Paola, and today I'm here as the third speaker of my team, the Flyers, in order to highlight some of our points of strength, but also to point out some of the others' flaws. Indeed, I will start by refuting some of the things that the other team has said during our interesting debate. So, first of all, you said multiple times that the main example, the main reference for your argumentation was the COVID case, the COVID situation, but I don't think that COVID or also addictions are the only right examples. Indeed, you haven't talked about those people who haven't got the choice or even the personal responsibility to live a healthy style or an unhealthy one. Indeed, I hope we all know that in some countries, in the underdeveloped countries, a lot of people, a lot of children have not the possibility to rely on a personal choice. So why we should leave them behind? I repeat again our main quote, so leave no one behind. We have to make the goals of Agenda 2030 true, and with your proposal, with your policy, we aren't going to do that at all. Moreover, as I will repeat something that our first speaker has already said. So don't you think that we will be the authors of another word? Nowadays, we have a first word and a third word. Are we sure that we want to be responsible for the creation of a fourth word, enhancing the current gap between social classes, enhancing the gap, as our second speaker said, from the economical point of view? Indeed, as also Simona has said, a normal family as ours in the US spends basically over $1,000, over $1,300 every month. Just, yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, but are we going to talk about public hospitals in Italy?
No, it wasn't specified that it was in Italy, so our argumentation can also, I think that can also regard the general, no thank you, I would like to go on. Indeed, in this case, I will repeat the motion of today. So, this House believes that people who maintain a healthy lifestyle should pay more for their medical assistance in public hospitals. So, Italy is not mentioned at all, but we are talking of a more general situation. So, I will go back to my argumentation by also saying that a normal family, as I said before, spends a lot of money on food every month, and also on other stuff. And this is why, for instance, in our developed countries, the rate of obesity is so high. We aren't able to pay so few money for having a healthy lifestyle in lots of cases, in a major part of cases. Moreover, you also said that we should care more about individuals, and that by applying your policy, we would encourage them to quit their unhealthy lifestyle and their unhealthy habits. But that is not true at all. Indeed, we care for all of individuals when we give them equal opportunities, equal rights, and an equal system. Indeed, I will make an example. You talked a lot, as I said before, about the COVID pandemic, but you haven't mentioned the fact that, as also Hippocrates, which is fundamental for who studies medicine, says that when you go to the hospital, The doctors have not the right to judge you because of your unhealthy lifestyle. Indeed, if it is an emergency, they are meant to cure you, no matter what your habits or your lifestyle is. They don't even have to ask you what you do in your life. No, thank you, I would like to go on. Since this is what is on the base of the ones that studies medicine. Moreover, I would also like to say that we are not judges. We can define what's unhealthy and what's healthy, since we have to adopt, in that case, a lot of parameters that concerns not just their habits and their lifestyle, but also other things. Moreover, I would also remember you something that our second speaker said about criminality and its increasement because of your policy. Indeed, I make a simple example. A man has to see his son, his little child die because he cannot afford a complete or a right healthcare and health treatment. So maybe he goes to some criminal that will give him money, and that will concern an improvement of criminality, as I said before. Or maybe other people also rely on fake doctors or peoples that or these criminals that maybe could evade your policy, because as we all know, when a policy is on the limit with an imposition, everyone before or after will rebel. Someone will not be conscious, will not be in the same position as you. Moreover, I would also like to say that we, as I said before, that this gap would not just be between our community, but also with the globalized world. So maybe the people that live in developed countries will also become richer and richer, while the poorest countries will become poorer and poorer, as public hospitals, since our motion doesn't say Italian public hospitals, are regarding the whole world, the whole civilized world. Okay, so at the end, I will also like to say something that your third speaker has said. So your third speaker, Emanuele, said that anorexia and other disorders are conscious, but we all know that they aren't supposed to be conscious. They start as a desire that, no thank you, I would like to go on, but thank you for your PI. So I think that this was, I don't know, maybe a mistake, an innocent mistake that you made, but this is not true. I would like to finish my speech by saying that we believe that people who maintain an unhealthy lifestyle should not pay more for their medical assistance in public hospitals, since they are public, and since this will increase just prejudice. Thank you all for your attention.
So if you're ready, you can go with the replies. Okay.
Speaking in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so hello again everybody. I'm now going to do the replies. It was a very interesting debate, so thank you to the other team. Well, I'd like to quickly go through all the main points of clashes that were mainly about the free will of the individual and how it affects the society as a whole and also the person itself. Well, we think that people aren't fully able to decide for themselves. Let me explain it better. There is free will, and free will doesn't always go according to what is right, so we should always remember that, because that is fundamental to today's motion. People who conduct an unhealthy lifestyle, you said it is conscious, but we think up to a certain extent. We don't think that about the COVID situation, they might have been avoiding vaccine because of prejudice, because of disinformation, because of that, and that wasn't right, of course. So the free will and the thing that was right weren't actually going the same way. Another point of clash was the proportional system, which I think is flawed to today's motion, because if they make people pay little money for this fee that goes with bad behaviors, this actually isn't effective. This actually doesn't prevent people to stop doing that behavior, because they think they might think that they can afford that in the end. And even if they weren't talking about proportional system and they were just making people pay too much, that would have led to criminality and discrimination itself. So to, as we always said, to a larger portion of people is left behind. So in the end, we want a word that is not always so apt to make distinctions, so ready to make people pay for their mistakes, even if they're conscious. We should, as a community, come together, help each other, because we think that this is about what community is all about. You also mentioned that there is no public health, there are only taxpayers. But are we people only taxpayers? Isn't healthcare about something more, about the community itself? Shouldn't people that have more money, that the healthcare and the tax is just a mean to make all people live better? We should think about that when we think of making people pay more because they have made mistake previously to the access of healthcare, because the access to healthcare would make them better. They could actually come to another way of thinking, because they could access that in a better way without any other problems afterwards, and they would have been encouraged to seek healthcare instead of avoiding it because of the fear that they would have to face another economic crisis, another personal an economic problem after they would have been cured. Do we really want to cure people halfway? To cure them when it's necessary, and then make them worried about how they would have to face some money costs that may have been proportional, but people in the end are always gonna pay. We don't want that. We want people to be equal. We want people to help each other in order to leave no one behind. Because in the end, if we make people get accountable of their bad behaviors, in the end, we make them, we leave them behind, and we do not make our hand take them with us, but only we just jerk them away from us. And this is why we should never make people pay for their bad behaviors. Thank you.
debate.
Good morning again. Good morning again. I am the fourth speaker of the proposition team, and my job today will be to conclude this debate and to state some of the major points of strength that we have, or, well, the major points of clash, that we have faced during this interesting and respectful debate. Firstly, I think that we have discussed about the meaning of the word unhealthy, and from the proposition team, we have given the public and the other team a very specific definition, whereas the opposition team dismissed this definition and in fact talked about anorexia and other addictions, other illnesses and diseases which are, as we have stated in the beginning, unconscious, I'm sorry. But we have stated in the beginning that we do not want to talk, that we didn't want to talk about unconscious illnesses, unconscious decisions. Therefore, I think that we have gone on different paths in that direction, and therefore we think that we have won this clashing point because you haven't really we haven't really understood each other in that point, on that topic, and we think we've won because of the fact that the opposition team can't seem to define what an unhealthy lifestyle means in this context. Another point we have discussed is the concept of the free will and of responsibility. For the opposition team, we have seen that citizens have no responsibility but to care about others. But as we all know, everyone has the responsibility to care for themselves and for the others. But by not making them pay for what they've done, we as the proposition team think that we are not making others feel safe, we are not caring for others' security, others' health. Therefore, we think that also this clashing point was won by the proposition team. The last point that I think was greatly discussed was one of the points of the Agenda 2032, which is about how nobody should be left behind. But as we've stated multiple times, a proportional system would actually solve this kind of problem. But it would not create criminality and a high level of criminality rates because of what we've stated in our interventions. Therefore, I think that we have won this debate, and I encourage this House to support our motion, so the proposition team's line of conduct. I thank you everybody for this respectful debate, and I thank you also, all of you, for listening to this very amazing debate. Thank you everyone.